Hi, welcome back to Welcome America's Digital Edition Journey. Thank you for joining me again. Today we're going to continue on with the football logo design that we created in the previous two videos. We're going to talk about trims, making some additional color changes, and then setting the actual colors of the design. So let me go ahead and bring up the football jersey, the football logo design. Because the first thing that we want to talk about is trims. As we look at this design, this is in true view, so the way we see it on the screen is the way it's actually going to sew. If we take a good look at the string of text for football, we see that there are no trims between each of the letters. So this is where we want to begin by changing some of the trims and making a modification to the design. So I'm going to go ahead and select that object. I'm going to go to my object properties, and I'm going to go into connectors, which I'm already there, and I'm going to set this because there are two types of objects for connectors within Wilcom. You have after object. That's going to be used as you're digitizing. So what happens at the end of that particular object? Because I'm working with a string of text, I want to make sure that I'm working with the inside object parameters. So the first one that we see is the type, meaning how is it going to connect from one letter to the other. I'm going to keep it set at jump. And then trim after. How do I want it to trim? Right now it is set it off, which is why we see no trims and we see that string of thread pulling from letter to letter. I'm going to go and select if next connector is greater than 2 millimeters. That is the setting that I recommend. As soon as I click on it, it regenerates the object. And if you look closely, all those strings are gone from that string of text. Now, there is one that remains, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I press the B key on my keyboard to activate my magnifying glass. So I'm going to click and drag and zoom in on this area. Between the B and the A, you see that there still is a string there. I'm going to go ahead, and with it selected, it's still selected because there's a pink line, go back to my object properties, and I'm not going to set it at always, but I'm going to change this to say 1.5 millimeters. This time I'm going to click on tie off, and at 1.5 millimeters, as soon as I moved over to the tie off, it rebuilt this object and it's inserted a trim here before sewing the A. If I zoom in just a little bit more, you see this area here, it looks like a crossover stitch. That is what we call a tie-off. The tie-off is generated before the trim. The tie-off is very, very important that it is in your design before any trims so that you do not have the risk of these letters or any object in your design actually unraveling. So let me just press 0 on the keyboard and go back over to my object properties, go to connectors. My tie off is set before a trim and a color change, so when the system generates a trim or sees a color change, Wilcom is going to insert that tie off. Now there's an arrow here, which means there's another option within this area, and this one is the tie-in. The tie-in occurs at the beginning of an object. So it's just some lockdown or tie-in stitches that makes a couple small stitches in our pattern before it starts either the underlay or the top stitching, which allows for your top thread and your bobbin to lock together to form the stitches. So I believe that it's also a good idea to set this at after trim and color change. So basically it's any time that needle is lifting from your garment or whatever it is that you're sewing. So my design is looking good. I've got trims in all the right places. I'm going to go ahead and add one more color change just to review how to set a color change in a design. So let me just move the screen over to the right. I'm going to add a color change to the second line of text for football. All I did was select it, and then I'm just going to click on another color. So if you look at the color palette down below, each of the colors that are assigned to this design have a little blue square in the upper right hand corner, signifying that it is a used color. In this case, the number 8 we didn't use, so it doesn't have that blue square. So I'm going to go over to my color object list. Let me move this over again. And here is the sew sequence of my design. So my design has a color changes. But these are not the right colors for my design. This is going to end up going, it's a left chest on a polo or on a sweatshirt. So I'm going to go back to the color object list, and I need to change these out to match the color, the sew off color. So I'm going to come to the colorway editor, and I'm going to go into this area down at the bottom where it says select threads, because then I'm going to pull in the thread chart that I use. In this case, it's the Madeira Polyneon 40. So I'm going to scroll down, find it from the thread charts that we load through the installation. And here's the Madeira Polyneon 40. And I'm going to move it over to my selected chart. I don't use the Madeira Classic 40, so I'm going to click it and move it back. So I'm only working with the Madeira Polyneon 40. If you're a shop that uses multiple threads, even thread brands, you can, as long as you can move them over and mix and match them. So I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to call attention to the colorway editor, which is over to the right hand side. This top area here, these are the colors we see in the color palette down below. I'm going to move this up to the top so it's easier for all of you to see. Okay, so these are the colors that that are assigned down here. And these are the threads within my chart that I pulled in. So I'm going to start working with my dark green. Let me move red out. Okay, so notice as long as there's nothing in this area, which is my search, as soon as I click on the color up top, color number 1, dark green, Wilcom matches it to all the greens within that selected chart. My football is not green, it's going to be brown. I don't know the code for brown, so I'm just going to type in brown. Pulls in any of those threads that are named with the word brown, and I'm going to choose light brown sugar. Notice it's selected with that dotted line around the color, and the dark green up here is selected. You see a gray box around it. I'm going to click on the spool of thread and assign it. So light brown sugar now gets assigned to color number 1 here in the palette down below, and of course in my logo. The next one I'm working on is blue, which is going to be these areas of the football, and that should be white. So I'm going to type in white. I'm just going to choose 1804, and again, I'm assigning it. So it's changed here in my palette and in my design. Now we're working on the red, which is the detail. It's going to be black. I choose 1800 black and assign it. So see how the color is coming along? The top Sunday is for football. I am going to go ahead and make that red. 1734 electric red. I'm going to assign it. And this blue, I wanted to just pick because my customer didn't really say, he wasn't specific about the blue he wanted. So with it selected up here, it's going through the different blues in that chart, and I'm going to choose ultramarine and move it up. Now this red here I need it to be the same red as number 4, so I'm just going to type in 1734 and assign it to the top. And this black, the seventh color, is going to be 1800. So I'm going to close out my colorway editor, and we're going to go back to the color object list. And if you notice, I didn't add color functions. All I did was colorize my design to be the true sew-off colors. Now, if we take a look at this and we're thinking about being productive in our designs, we may say, well, we could take this red and combine it and see this red actually should be the same red as number 4. So what I can do here is just click the number 4 down below so they match the colors, the sewing color. So we might be thinking, well, why not combine number 4, the two number 4s together to reduce the color change? Let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. So I'm going to click on color on this number 4, so it's object 38 and 39. I'm going to click and drag so that it sews with this. And that's actually a good move. So see what I'm doing is I'm reducing colors. So my design is actually going to sew productive, is going to be a little bit more productive. This number 9, I actually forgot to change it in my colorway editor, so I'm just going to assign it number 2. Now again, we're thinking, well, why not let it sew with this number 2 up here with this white? Again, more productive, reducing color changes. Let's go ahead and click and drag. And what I'm doing is I'm just dragging it to the new location where I want it to sew. When I do that, I change the entire look of the design. So there are cases where you're going to need that secondary color. So what I'm going to do in this case is just undo my last action, and the undo feature in Wilcom Digital Edition is up here where I'm pointing right under setup and window. So now I've added trims, I've changed some colors to this design, and then I've colorized it so that it's actually sewing in the colors that this design should actually be. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File, and I'm going to click Save to save my design.